first of all, the big headline, at least of the week here around the state of Nebraska, is the volleyball match that will take place in Memorial Stadium against Nebraska Omaha. The match sold out in less than 2 days, and we're pleased to welcome in Nebraska Athletic Director Trev Alberts, former Husker great as well, here on HuskerOnline Headlines to hear more about that. Trev, first of all, welcome to the show, and congratulations. This idea, I'm sure when you came up with the idea to put in there, you knew it was going to take off, but I can't imagine you thought you'd be chasing a potential world record for a female-attended sporting event.
Well, good day, Sean and Steve. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's frankly pretty humbling. I mean, Husker Nation is just different. And I have this great privilege of going across the country, meeting with colleagues in the Big Ten, and people are really envious of our fan base. And so we're going to try really hard not to take them for granted. But, when we started thinking about this, and the fact of the matter is, I was hoping about 35 to 40. I know what we are really hoping to be able to give to the other participants. I know what the expenses are. And so we're like, okay, here's the break-even point. We got to have at least 35, 40 with concessions, and it'll be worthwhile. I never thought this would happen. And I never thought it'd be one thing that it would happen over the course of a couple of weeks. But, Husker fans broke the internet. It was wild. And really proud of our team. Our team has worked really, really hard. We got a lot of work in front of us. But, John likes to dream big. And sometimes I have to challenge him with, wait a minute, you want us to dream big. How about you dream big? And so he's fired up. All we need now is some decent weather. Because I can't imagine what it's going to be like to try to put 90,000 people into Vanny if we have some bad weather. So obviously we're thrilled, just grateful. It just shows how much people care about this university and athletic department. It's also indicative of the leadership of John Cook and Terry Pettit and just this vision that they had in our young women. Really, really proud of them, and looking forward to August 30th.
So at 83,000 tickets sold as of yesterday, 82,900. Now, you mentioned 90,000. The largest crowd to attend a women's sporting event in the U.S. is 90,185, and that was for the 1999 Women's World Cup final between U.S. and China. Is there a threat here to surpass that record? Can you do that? Are you able to do that?
Yeah, I certainly think there's a threat to that, Steve. We do have the field itself. There's some standing room stuff. And so, it's really hard to tell. We were over 90,000 for Garth Brooks, when we had that concert here. And so it's amazing with, just the physical size of the structure. I've asked our team to really take a hard look at, how do we do this? Is there additional space? How can we? And we need to do it safely. Obviously, there's fire marshal, there's codes, those kinds of things. We never want to do anything that would put anybody at risk. But there's an opportunity to rethink, look at how does the layout look? How can we do it? We also have to be a little bit careful, guys. Let's think about this. We had our season ticket holders for volleyball who are some of our most ardent supporters. And early on, I thought to myself, well, we'll just as we sell this thing out, we'll just move the court further and further. Well, that's really not fair to the people who have been with your program the longest. So while there might be a little bit of movement for the actual, court, I think it's going to be relatively static. Those folks that bought the first tickets, we need to ensure, in our season ticket holders that they're taken care of. And the nice thing at a place like Memorial Stadium with all of the ribbon board and the video boards, those folks, in South Stadium actually have an opportunity to see it through the video boards. But I think part of it is just being part of it, being part of history being made. So we're going to keep working on it, Zip. I think at minimum, this has to be the largest sporting event ever in the United States, for women and volleyball. Let's try to knock that down.
Okay. And Trev, I know you said that this is probably a one-time thing, but when you start to see the financial windfall this is going to make the university and the volleyball programs, it's going to be hard to say, if we can do it again, why not do it one more time a few years down the road?
Well, it's a good point, Sean. And, I think what happened is when we had the success we had with Garth Brooks, and then you have a success like this, sort of nationally with all kinds of booking agents or what have you. I mean, you develop a reputation as a place that supports big ideas and big events. And while I certainly am not going to be breaking any news here. The reality is we've had others that have reached out and said, hey, what about this? And so it's not beyond the realm of possibility that we don't think about, every summer trying to do something, that's unique, different. We're all looking at, hey, we've got this incredible facility. It's activated 7 football games a year. How do we look at our assets and resources differently and engage them? And as new, we're just bringing a new subset of people, maybe new eyeballs. I know most of us think that, well, these are all the same people who come to Husker football games. The reality is there's going to be a lot of people at this volleyball game that don't come to football games regularly. And hopefully they have a great experience and maybe they, engage in other sports and become part of our family. So it's a great thing, not just for the athletic department. This is really good for our university. We're looking at enrollment initiatives and those types of things, bringing people to your campus, that's important stuff.
Absolutely, Trev. Switching gears to football. Now, it was very striking, and I believe it was in February on your statewide radio show. You had expressed on that show, and you kind of almost said it as an aside, that the spring game would be more game-like. And you seemed to want that. And it turned out that way, and I got to tell you, it was incredibly refreshing. But why was that important to you?
Well, I think it's important to our fans, Steve. I mean, it's part of respecting what our fans expect from our program. I really feel passionate about this. It's not just about football. At the end of the day, we need programs that are reflective of the passion, ideals, and values that Nebraskans hold dear, that our alumni, that our supporters and donors. And, we're Nebraska. We should just really embrace being the greatest Nebraska we can be. And you know what? We don't have to be anything else. We've proven that if we just are Nebraska, really good things can happen. And so, I think this is a thing that Coach Rule, I think, is really made an impact on him as he's traveled our state. And I've heard him talk about this, and you go out to Western Nebraska, and he went to a basketball game, and he talked about how this fan that he met with his family getting ice cream down the Haymarket talked about, well, we're going to head back home. So they drove 4 hours to come to one of our sporting events. People don't understand the commitment that Husker Nation makes to support our young men and young women. And so to honor that and to respect that, I think you have to do things that are important to them, Steve.
Sticking on the topic of football, you've got a lot on your plate with facilities. The new football facility is set to open. What is the update there? How much of that facility will be ready to go this summer? And then what will be kind of the other phasing as far as opening the rest of that building up?
Yeah, it's a good question. And we're really excited about the Go Big project. Obviously, it's one of the reasons why Coach Rule is here. And I just talked about, our fans, what the expectations are. Development is the DNA of Nebraska athletics. This is who we are. This is what we're really good at. And we should never stray from. So obviously the, Go Big project's the brick and mortar behind that vision. So, when you do a $165 million project, this is pretty sophisticated. The reality is we hope to have all 3 levels, all 3 phases, everything done at once prior to the fall. We're not going to be able to accomplish that goal, Sean, but what we have been able to do is say, okay, we've got a recovery plan in place, back on track in this sense, everything specific to football. So there'll be no disruption to the team. We want to make sure that, everybody who's part of the locker room, those very specific football areas, those will be done prior to the fall. Okay. So the team will be in there. Other things like the weight room will be done as well, but other things like, the training table, academic support, compliance, life skills, and perhaps even some of the coaches' offices are going to be a little bit behind. It could be 4 to 5, up to 6 months, but definitely by the end of the year, the start, of the next calendar year, everything will be done. So maybe a couple other levels that'll be about 6 months behind. But right now, we're just really focused in on the players. And quite frankly, that's what Coach Rule wanted. This is about the players. Let's make sure that the players are taken care of first. And the other, obvious benefit we have is that we have a training table right now. So we can still utilize, those units that are active, within West Stadium. So a little bit behind on a couple of them, but player specific stuff will all be in place prior to the start of fall camp, which will be really important to the football program.
We got one final question here for Athletic Director Trev Alberts. Trev, the stadium renovations as well. You announced an architecture firm, HDR out of Omaha, a project anywhere from $200 to $500 million. Where are you at in that process? I mean, that's a wide range of what you want to spend. I mean, how do you kind of determine ultimately what direction you want to take the future of Memorial Stadium as you enter this 100th season?
Well, and that's part of the process we're going through, right? I feel very passionate about this as well. Number one, this is not my athletic department. I just happen to sit in this chair. This belongs to Nebraska. And we have a 100-year-old stadium that's iconic that we need to ensure. And I feel a burden while sitting in this seat to ensure like everything we're enjoying today is previous leadership's vision and fiscal responsibility. And our job is to say, okay, we're not talking about today, but what's the next 50 years look like at Memorial Stadium? And how do we ensure that our fans, ingress, egress, modernization, comfort, how do we look at new revenue opportunities? How do we not expect just football fans to pay increasing prices, but how do we, diversify what some of those revenue streams look like? So that's what HDR's job is. We currently have an RFP out for construction management, and we'll end up getting there. But we're running through a process right now of diving into it. It's not just the stadium. I mean, you think about how complicated this is. We have a 315,000 square foot building, the Go Big project, coming online. All the programming that's currently within the stadium a lot of that is moving over to the Go Big. So it's not just the fans, while that's very, very important, but also is how are we going to backfill these spaces? What is it? Do we look at other integration within our own campus? So I'm not smart enough to do it, guys. We've got some really smart people that understand space allocation, that understand. And so we're going to go through this process. We first need to understand how much money can we raise? What are all of our sources here? What's the total amount? And then how do we create, a vision around that that's great for our fans, that looks to the future? And ultimately what we'll be doing here early fall, late summer is once we get that plan done, we will bring that back to the university leadership and ultimately the Board of Regents. And we'll make a recommendation about what we believe we can execute. And then they'll make the decision about whether they think that this is financially, fiscally responsible and doable. But those are the details that we're in right now, working on it every single day. I'm excited about it. And I think it's the right thing to do for Nebraska, especially when you consider what's happening nationally and all the disruption. I think Nebraska has a brilliant opportunity here with this coaching staff and with some strategic thinking around our business model to really emerge from this disruption in a really positive and powerful position.
I got one more, Trev, and it's about Coach Rule. Just real quick. I was reading some things you said early in your tenure here as the AD. You said this football job, the Nebraska head football coaching job, is a grinder job. This job has always been about people willing to pay a bigger price than the other guy. It's what you love about this place, you said. Was Rule's sort of, now we're getting to know Matt Rule a little bit more. Was his grinder approach, his grinder mentality, a leading factor in you hiring him? Did you know that about him? And what has been striking to you in that regard?
100%, Steve. I watched Coach Osborne as a player, and I often felt bad for him. I mean, the guy just worked, and he was so competitive. But listen, let's be honest with ourselves. There are some areas that, and every program's this way, there are strengths about this program that other people don't have. We've talked about our fan base. There are, quote, weaknesses and challenges here that we have that some others don't. And so to overcome that, number one, you have to have somebody that just works and that is driven by the work, not the ancillary benefits that come with that position, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. And so I was well aware of that. And part of, in talking to coaches, you lay a very clear vision about the expectation. And those that aren't interested in doing that probably aren't interested in being, your candidate. And so it works both ways. That certainly, didn't push Coach Rule away. In fact, that's exactly, what he what he felt as well. So, leadership is so important. Who's at the top really matters, because if you start with somebody like Matt Rule, who's a grinder, who's purpose-driven relative to helping young people have a better life, both in academics, all of the things that I had the privilege of living as a culture, as a player under Coach Osborne. If you hire a head coach who has that passion and vision, he is going to surround himself with other people, coaches, administrators, support staff, recruiting staff that thinks like him. And so you're not just hiring Matt Rule, the grinder, you're hiring an entire staff that looks a lot like that. And that's what we're seeing right now. You're seeing it on the recruiting trail. You're seeing it with coaches that are, Matt was with me last night till 10 o'clock at a donor event, and
wow.
It's not just grinder as a coach. It's every single one of these components that lead to success. It's got to matter to you. And it mattered to Coach Osborne. And Coach Osborne talked about, being willing to pay a price bigger than the guy next to you. And that has to be the secretary. That has to be the football coaches. That has to be the players. And if we have that, and that's our culture of toughness, work ethic, and unity, this place has proven you can do some pretty amazing things. And Coach Rule's really leading the way in that area, Steve.
Thank you, Trev.
Well, Trev, we appreciate the time here on a Friday. I know you're very busy with a lot going on, and hopefully we can get you on Husker Headlines again.
Look forward to it, guys. Thanks for all you do.